Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hello, I'm DJ Ross in Mountain View, California.
On every episode of Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week, we're playing Minishoot Adventures and Botany Manor. Plus, we played Content Warning again, and we finally got it right.
We did it. We're SpookTube famous. So, this will be the last episode of the show. You can find us over on SpookTube from now on.
Correct.
Please like and subscribe.
We are SpookTube affiliates now.
Ooh.
Yep.
Sounds
I got a
scary.
cool hoodie.
Oh, that's excellent. Oh, I wonder if they're going to come out with swag for that game.
I would support that. I'd rock a SpookTube t-shirt.
SpookTube hoodie, yeah.
Yeah.
Do that.
Find me on SpookTube.
It's like, well, what is this?
Yeah, people are like, "What? Where are you? What?"
It sounded like you said YouTube, but you got one of the words wrong.
Yep. And we'd be all, if you know, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's the hoodie right there, or the t-shirts on the front, just SpookTube on the back. If you know, you know.
Right. It's a coolness test.
There you go.
But anyways, yeah. So we went back to Content Warning with some folks from the community, and yeah, I think we nailed it. I think we did a really good job.
I think we figured it out. Yeah, it went much better than our initial attempts. We actually got some views, had a much better idea of what to do. Came up with some interesting new strategies as well.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we finally met that weird little ghost character with the knife. That's all I wanted. Like, that was the thing was in the trailers. And I was just like, where is that spooky little ghost? Because it was one of those things in the trailer that got me thinking, like, maybe this isn't spooky. Maybe they're just silly little characters down there. And the fact that they have a knife is just incidental. But no, they really do try and stab you with it. So
yes, yeah.
It's kind of dangerous.
So we played last Monday night. We streamed this. It's on Twitch. You can go back and watch it if you'd like to. But we were joined by Creed and Twisted Link from our Discord group, and they rounded our 4-player team on Content Warning. And yeah, I think we had a pretty solid strategy. I think we did a fine job.
Yeah. It was just so helpful having the 2 extra people. For so many reasons, because there's like, first of all, there's 2 extra people you can hand the camera to, or perhaps throw the camera at if you are getting attacked by some horrible monster.
Right. I suppose when DJ and I played together, if one of us died, the other one, the immediate mission became like, how do I get back to the surface as quickly as possible?
Yeah.
But yeah, we our numbers were starting to dwindle when we had a 4-player team going, and we all still kind of stood around and wait for the other person to get killed, and slowly, eventually, made our way back to the surface at a leisurely pace.
Yeah, and man, did we get those views or likes or whatever, however they measure it? I feel like we got a much better or like a much more representative experience. Or it was much closer to how they envisioned the game going. Because, like, yeah, once you get the views, you get the money to buy better equipment, and then you like that opens up a whole new set of things you can do down in the underground, wherever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, completely different, much better experience the second time around.
We've had a couple of other cool strategies, too, that our buddy Creed brought with him. That apparently you could go back, and DJ and I didn't know this, you could go back on the second day and find the camera that you lost if you had a party wipe. And you just had to sort of figure out where you were in kind of the bizarre kind of convoluted layout of the place. So we were quite successful on one of our playthroughs of going back and actually finding the camera. And then we still used the other camera that we had to create new content, and we had 2 days worth of content that we could upload and share on SpookTube, and it just kind of blew our numbers up.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, but it was good. It's I still find it kind of amazing that the video you shoot in the game you can sort of watch on the TV in the game later, but you can also download to your phone or computer and watch it as if it were its own little YouTube clip, and it's genuinely spooky. Like it has the little rec like light up in the corner and the frames around it, and it's a shot like an Instagram video. It's a perfectly square little thing, but it's full of shaky cam footage and jump cuts and lots of people screaming and being dragged away by blobby monsters, and it's kind of terrifying if you watch it out of context.
The shaky cam effect is so well done. I can't tell if it's like authentic to how the characters are actually moving in the game, or like how people are moving the camera themselves, because somebody's actually filming everything by hand, or if it just adds a little extra shake to it. But it looks really good when you're watching the recorded clip. It just looks like straight out of some like cryptid video on YouTube that you might come across. It's like, so it looks like somebody was actually holding a camcorder.
Yeah. Well, you get the kind of the Blair Witch Project effect too, where like inevitably you'll be holding the camera as you die, and then it's the camera falling on its side and still sort of filming your friends running around in a panic trying to escape the monster and pick up the camera simultaneously. And so it definitely has all of the trappings of a found footage movie, for ill or for will. But it works surprisingly well, kind of out of context of the admittedly silly video game, to sort of download and watch these things separately. I went back and I watched some of the videos from the first night that you and I played, like again, separately out of context, just sort of one afternoon sitting in front of my computer going, oh, I forgot I downloaded these. And they were genuinely kind of unnerving. So,
it's a little disturbing.
It works. I don't know. I wasn't necessarily, I liked the content warning when we first played it, but then the second time when we had the full team and kind of built some mechanisms around kind of doing stunts and yelling and running around and trying to make kind of the most entertaining and kind of clickable, likable video we possibly could, it really felt like we kind of pulled it off. I was quite pleased with the finished product.
Yeah, really good, really good. I've heard that they're adding some kind of like global progression to it, which I don't really know what they have in mind, but I'm hoping they just add an option where you can start with a little more cash, because I think, just having all the extra equipment, and especially the emotes were super fun. Just having those right off the bat would sort of expedite your views quite a bit. But
or like something that you would carry from playthrough to playthrough, you mean?
Yeah, so like, you unlock something and then it's just permanently unlocked for your character or whatever.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But I guess it remains to be seen what's in store for content warning. Yeah.
It does sort of seem like the devs have been surprised at the reception. I think that obviously they had a very unique launch and gave it away for free on April Fool's Day to a ton of people, which had the sort of desirable outcome of having a lot of people kind of have their eyes on it at once. But they still are saying that they've continued to sell copies of it. It's only a couple bucks, right? It's $5 or $6.
Yeah.
Since turning off the free option on April 2nd. It's kind of hard to escape. I don't spend a lot of time on Twitch, but there's definitely people streaming it. And the developers have said repeatedly how thrilled they have been by the reception and how many people continue to buy it.
Yeah, well, it's got such a good hook. Plus, it's practically designed to go viral. I mean, the game itself, that's what happens in the game. So, of course, just sharing these little clips around is bound to get more people into it. So, really, really smart.
What's surprising is I've not seen, unless they're out there somewhere and I'm just somehow not being fed them, because how, social media curates these things, is that I'm surprised my Instagram feed is not full of content warning videos.
Just more people's clips.
You would think it would be kind of more ubiquitous.
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody's too busy throwing a tantrum over Helldivers or whatever's going on.
I was thinking maybe it's all over TikTok, and it's just one app too many. I can't do it all.
Yeah. I should put some. I don't know. I just don't share the clips. Well, then I'm like, oh, I know why. It's just because it all the clips are just me making weird noises over them the entire time. Where I'm just like, as I get murdered by a snail.
What do you think? It reflects poorly on you?
I don't know. It just makes me very self-conscious. And you think I'd be over it after having done a weekly audio show for 10 years. But no, it's still just weird to post clips of myself making strange sounds.
That amazing moment where you're like, do I really sound like that? Is that actually my voice? Yeah.
I gotta get one of those little voice filter things so I can like sound like a robot, maybe, or like I wonder if they could do celebrity voices at this point. Who do I want to sound like?
There's got to be an AI solution for it.
Immediately went to Bob Dylan,
Samuel Jackson.
Yeah, that'd be good. There you go. I heard somewhere that some AI specialist, some analyst predicted that there will be like $500 billion of fraud this year solely because of AI voice simulators.
Oh, really?
Like, oh, that's not good. Probably not good. But anyway, it's time for me to get in on that. So next stream we'll be doing President Obama and Samuel L. Jackson play content warning.
I just want my 1% of 1% of that $500 million.
Yeah, $500 billion.
Trillion.
I mean, I'll take the $500 million as well. A trillion is also fine.
Woof. Content warning. What a delightful, weird, odd little thing. If you have a group of friends to play it with, I would recommend definitely checking it out. It's on Steam. It's not on anything else yet. Hopefully, it sort of makes its way to other consoles. But yeah, what an oddity this freaking game is.
Yeah. I love this weird stuff still pops up on Steam once in a while.
What else are we up to, DJ? Anything fun going on in your world? Is he a little closer to summer here? You starting to get excited about summer vacation?
Something like that. Yeah, I'm going on a little trip in a couple of weeks. Going back to Tokyo at the end of May, so I'll be out of here. I'm just gonna leave you on your own. Fend for yourself.
That should be annoying.
Just annoying. Just why? because I'm leaving you high and dry, or just being by yourself is just what happens.
There's that. But I'm not a good only child.
No.
But Also, my little setups, how was that game, DJ? How did you feel about that? What in what way does
50 minutes of silence while you wait for somebody to respond?
In what way does this relate to your love for all things Final Fantasy?
Yeah. You know, you really need that specific perspective on whatever you're playing, whatever
and then
is
when
like
nobody
the polar
provides
opposite.
So we'll come up with a plan. I'm sure we'll be able to find a way to get some content in the stream here for our paying customers.
Yeah. And maybe even for the non-paying customers.
Yeah.
But no, I'm getting excited about that. That's sneaking up. I'm mostly prepared for it. I've been trying to figure out what my gaming situation is going to be while I'm on a trip, though.
Oh, that's my next question for you. Is what are you bringing with you? How are you going to keep yourself entertained?
Oh, so I don't
other than doing Tokyo things.
Yes, well, that's the thing. You gotta ideally, I'm not doing any gaming because there's better things to do. But
just sitting in the Airbnb all day playing a game you could play back home.
Yes, which is inevitably there's going to be some downtime.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, I should have something to play, and I find it's a tricky thing to sort of decide on something for the situation because I don't want it to be a game that's just so engrossing that I never go outside. I just waste the entire time just playing whatever it is. But I want it to be something with substance. I don't want to go over there and just be like, oh, a million, I don't know, cross puzzles. Actually, that would be the thing that gets me to stay inside. So that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I was really hoping to play Persona 4 at some point, but I feel like that is just too much. That is first of all, it's just an enormous game. I don't know if I want to commit to that right now, and it doesn't seem like one of those games you could just pop open every once in a while and play for a little bit and put it away. So probably
it might be a good airplane game, though. I mean, if you had a stretch of uninterrupted time to and from,
it might be. Yeah. That maybe I'll do some Persona 3 or 4. Yeah, one of those games.
Yeah.
Inevitably, I feel like when I'm out and about, I defer to whatever's on my phone, and in that case, it is just desert golfing. So probably going to play some of that.
Sure.
been playing a lot of Slay the Spire on my phone recently, which...
On your phone? Cool.
On my phone, yeah. Which was a mistake, because it's so easy to play when it's on your phone. And that game is just... Oh, it's insidious. It's so difficult to stop playing that game.
Yes, that has been my experience with it, yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully not too much Slay the Spire. I'm still trying to decide on something, but as far as like hardware, I'm probably gonna take the Odin, my Android handheld, and see how that goes. Because that's like another advantage to that is it just has everything on it. Or not everything, but it has many things. Whereas if I were just taking the Switch or something like that, it'd probably be just 2 or 3 things that I would probably get into. I don't know.
So for a device like that, you have access, obviously, to the Google Play Store, I presume. And if the game supports controller, you can play them right on the Odin.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you doing some emulation on there too, I imagine?
Yeah. I've got... Well, so I was going to play the Persona 4 Golden on the Switch, because everybody's like, oh yeah, you got to play Persona 4 Golden. That's the best version of it. And then I like stumbled on this Twitter thread a couple weeks ago of somebody just they put up a bunch of side-by-side shots of Persona 4 Golden against the original PS2 version. And the PS2 version looks so much better. It's just like all these weird sort of like atmospheric effects are missing in the newer versions. Oh. And it just completely changes the character of the game. Like when you're exploring the dungeons or whatever you do in Persona 4, there's kind of this ominous fog effect everywhere. And that is just not in the newer versions for one reason or another. I think it was like a lot of PS2 games just had tons of fog in them still because it was like a graphics thing. It's like a limitation, but it's sort of like developers got pretty good at rolling with it. So yeah, so like all of that is just missing in the new one, and like the lighting is different. So kind of disappointed to learn that, especially because I've already bought Persona 4 Golden for the Switch.
Oh,
but looks like I'm probably just going to end up playing the PS2 one. So that is still an option.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's. You don't want a situation where you have to take 2 devices.
No,
plus your phone.
Yeah, right, yeah. Exactly.
How's the battery life on the Odin?
That's pretty good. I typically, like when I was using it every day, I would just plug it in every night. Like regardless of sort of how much I had used it. I don't think I ever got into a situation where I just ran down the battery completely because I had used it that much.
Wow.
But it also depends a lot on what you're playing on it. Like a PS2 game, if you're emulating something like that, would use the battery much more than if you're just playing like Vampire Survivors, which I did quite a bit of as well. Oh, maybe that's the game. Maybe I just play Vampire Survivors over there.
Yeah. Kind of bite-sized, right? You kind of do a run, move on. Yeah.
And, even if you're doing the best you've ever done, it still cuts you off after about 30 minutes. So at that point, you just look around and be like, oh, yeah, I should go outside today and put it away.
Yeah. I mean, that's the argument for Slay the Spire, too. It's only a matter of time before I eat it, right?
Those runs are so long, though. They're like multiple hours long, or at least at the speed that I play Slay the Spire.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, I've had pockets of playthroughs with Slay the Spire where you end up in the multiple ascensions, where you're basically kind of ascending the spire multiple times over, and those just feel like, oh my god, is this ever going to end? And I'm afraid to put the device down and walk away because I've got some momentum going here, and I don't know if I'll have it when I come back, but. But it can feel a little endless. But there's also the ones too where still hundreds of hours on that game, I'll get 2 or 3 rooms into an ascension and just like, whoops, that was the wrong card.
Oh yeah. Sometimes you just have a terrible run. Yeah. That is something that I'm much more aware of this time that I've been playing it, because the previous time, like the only other time I played Slay the Spire was closer to when it came out, which was. I don't know when that was. It was around like 2019, 2020, I want to say.
Yeah. Geez, 19. It's got to be, yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, didn't really fully appreciate the roguelike factor of it. So I would just have runs that were awful and just stick with them. And this time I'm just like, no, I should stop. I should like cut my losses. This is not worth pursuing like this run. I'll just start a fresh one. So that's been interesting. I feel like I've learned, or I'm learning how to play the game much better than I did previously.
I mean, if that's your taste right now, I could still recommend Cobalt Core, which is a very very kind of in the vein of a Slay the Spire structure, but more of a sci-fi trapping.
Yeah.
And Balatro has been awesome, and I keep going back to that game this year too. And that's it's like a Slay the Spire like, but you're using poker hands rather than a custom deck.
Yeah.
And that gets kind of
that on Android.
I don't think it's on Android yet. It's on. Well, I guess that doesn't support your choice then. But yeah, those are both on Switch.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about taking the Switch, but then I don't know. I just sort of like feel like everything I'm playing on the Switch right now is enormous as well, because it would be like Persona 4 and Final Fantasy 9, which is just very large games. So probably not a good idea.
The internet is telling me right now that Slay the Spire was 2017, which is
unbelievable.
So many years ago.
Well, that was when the Switch came out, right? It ended up on the Switch several months after Steam or wherever it came out.
Correct. Yeah, it was definitely a PC game first. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So it's been a while, like since that initial sort of few weeks of playing that game.
Yeah. Well, cool. You'll have to let us know what you land on.
Yeah. Hopefully, I land on something.
just everything, just all the things,
just everything. The disadvantage of having just a bunch of old games on one handheld is that suddenly you do have all these choices. Like, I think I went to Washington DC briefly last year, and I didn't have a plan for stuff I was going to play, so I just ended up scrolling this long list of games that I had loaded on there, and I ended up playing like Dino Crisis 2 for the PlayStation 1, probably more than I should have while I was staying over there, but like that was fine.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, so many games that I haven't played in literal decades. Maybe I'll just get back into all of them during this vacation. But ideally not. Ideally, it's sort of a last resort. Just, you're waiting for a train or something like that, or you can't fall asleep. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. That's always just sort of my association with like flyaway vacations is I really generally don't take a lot of time to play games like during the course of the vacation, but it's the trip out and the trip back that I'm like, and I'm not a good like sleeper on airplanes. So I'm usually up staring at, the wall or staring at the seat in front of me, or God forbid, scrolling through the in-flight entertainment, which is just terrible. So yeah, I find that I almost always want to bring some device to make sure, Kindle obviously, and try to read, but something video gamey to occupy my flight time.
Yeah, you gotta have options. Like as good as whatever book you're reading is, or even as good as whatever game you're playing is. It's hard to do just one of those things for the entire flight, I find.
Correct. Yep.
Unless it's Slay the Spire. I could absolutely play that for 9 hours straight. But maybe that's what'll happen. We'll see.
Maybe that's the answer. I think you've nailed it. Yeah. Are you running that on the Odin as well?
No, I just have that on my phone at this point. I mean, it's on. I imagine it's on Android as well. I don't need another place to play Slay the Spire. That's not a good idea.
It is definitely on Android. I can vouch for
that. Okay. I mean, maybe if I put it on the Odin, I could just throw my phone away.
Call me when you get there from Slay the Spire. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
The call is coming from inside the Spire.
Oh man. I guess I would, at least if I did that, I could play it with like the gamepad control, because I really don't care for the touch controls in that game, in the mobile version.
Yeah. I've not tried to play it on my phone, but do I use the touch controls on the? I don't really.
Yeah.
on the Switch because it's just touch enabled, obviously, but I don't think I've used the touch. Although when I play Balatro, I use the touch almost entirely. So, I don't know. And no hard and fast rules on how you play collectible deck building games.
Sure.
Yeah, whatever feels right. And I've just mostly played so much Slay the Spire with controls that it just feels the right way to do it.
Yeah, they're just much more precise than the touch controls, I find, which doesn't seem like that would be that important for a card game, but I've definitely had a lot of situations where I thought I was like putting a card back into my hand and ended up playing it by mistake. And it was like, this run is ruined now.
I do. If I find myself in Balatro specifically, because you can discard hands from your deck, or you can select a bunch of cards and then hit a button to discard them, or you can select a bunch of cards and then hit a button to play that as your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I will like remind myself, X is to discard, it is not to play.
Yes.
Because I've had so many of those times where I meant to throw away a bunch of junk and end up playing that as my hand instead, and I'm like, no, everything is ruined.
I feel like games like that should just have an undo feature.
Yes.
Just like, come on, it's not multiplayer. It's basically just solitaire. Just give me an undo. Like, even if it's just like once per run, that would save me from some terrible situations.
Yeah. Or at least some feature in the game where it's like, that hand looks terrible. Are you sure you mean to play that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, what are you thinking? That's not how those cards work.
Nope, not at all. Good times.
Yeah.
Cool. I remember, and this was sort of the last I say this, you were talking about kind of traveling with multiple devices. I remember like at the height of 3DS / PlayStation Vita like games available to me, and being very agnostic about which one I liked more, and just kind of bouncing between both devices. Mm-hmm. I longed for a travel case that would fit both games perfectly. I could get the 3D,
both handhelds.
Both systems, yeah. I could get the Vita and the 3DS into one perfectly designed little case or crate or something like that without destroying either of them. I could travel with both of my devices. Yeah. And then, I guess sort of if you think about kind of the single platform future, is this really like one of those Android devices that just plays everything? Right?
Mm-hmm. No, I remember those years having to lug both the 3DS and the Vita around. Or the PSP. Did you ever take the PSP on vacation?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of I was living in upstate New York at the time, and I would take the train into New York City a lot for concerts and, just to hang out and stuff like that. And that my PSP was the device that I took most frequently on train rides. So I do have like a weird sense memory now of, the rare occasions where I do pick up my PSP. It was like me sitting on the Brown Line train to through the Hudson Valley back to Manhattan, and playing any number of PSP games.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, usually Ratchet and Clank something.
It's like, you probably weren't into Monster Hunter.
No, not a lot of Monster Hunter. No. Cool. All right. Well, have fun.
Thanks. Yeah, looking forward to it. It'll be nice. I haven't taken a vacation in quite a while.
Hearing all about it when you come back.
Yeah. Hear how many times I completed a Slay the Spire run.
What have we been playing recently, other than content warning, obviously?
I played this cool game. Speaking of, I was like, I saw the opportunity for a segue when you were talking about Cobalt Core, but that has long since passed. But I'm gonna go with it. I've been playing this game called Minishoot Adventures, which is like a twin-stick shooting game. But surprise, it's also a Metroidvania / Zelda-like.
What?
Zelda-like? It's basically just Zelda, but you are a little spaceship. In fact,
twin stick shooter is not a thing that we sort of talk about often on this show. I'm having trouble sort of envisioning what that means in the context of a video game. So, for my sake, for our listeners' sake, what is a twin stick shooter?
Geometry Wars.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So one stick is like the direction you shoot in, and the other stick is the direction you move in.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you're not pushing it like a trigger to shoot. The stick shoots.
Yes. Yeah, you got it. Robotron,
okay, cool.
I believe, is the older reference.
The gold standard, right?
Yeah. Or like do they still make these? I feel like they sort of fallen out of fashion. Like Geometry Wars was real big for a while.
Yeah.
But
is this not Vampire Hunters? Vampire Survivors?
No. So you don't. Vampire Survivors is just one stick. You don't even use that second stick because it shoots for you.
Oh.
But yeah, so this is much closer to Geometry Wars. Like you were saying, one stick you move your ship around, and the other stick you shoot in 360 degrees.
Got it.
Did you ever play Enter the Gungeon?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay, so this was another roguelike. Well, so it was a roguelike twin stick shooter, but you were like a little dude running around a dungeon. But the connection between Enter the Gungeon and Minishoot Adventures is that everything in Enter the Gungeon was sort of like gun themed or like bullet themed. So every item you picked up was some sort of like, it was like an ammo case or it was like some special kind of bullet. All the enemies looked like bullets. All the bosses were like gun related puns. Like at one point you fought the drag gun, and I forget what the boss actually looked like, but it's just a dragon, but they changed its name to just have the word gun in it. And it was relentless in how much they stuck to this. So like everything that just couldn't escape from it.
I'm pretty sure this is the detail that I remember about this game.
Yes.
From perhaps you and Paul, I think at some point talking about it on the show.
Yeah. So Minishoot Adventures is similar in that it's, instead of the gun puns and everything is little spaceships. So the player character, is a little spaceship. All the enemies are like enemies you would encounter if you were playing like a classic sort of side-scrolling space shooter. And then the most hilarious sort of manifestation of that is you'll be sort of, I was going to say walking around the overworld, but I guess you're flying. You will run into enemies that are like obvious Zelda sort of enemy archetypes, but instead of being that enemy, they're just a little spaceship. So at one point I was flying along the side of a river or something, and a little head popped out of the water and shot a fireball at me, and I was like, oh, that is exactly a Zora from Legend of Zelda, except I look closer at it and it's just a little like triangular spaceship with a cockpit like shooting a bullet at me every time it pops out of the water, which was hysterical. At one point, there's like a big hermit crab enemy, and whenever it lifts up the shell to take a shot at you, you can see where like instead of a crab's face that sticks out, it's the cockpit of a spaceship. So it's like
actually a spaceship.
Yes, so it's like that sort of stuff throughout the entire game. But other than like beyond that, the game itself is more or less Zelda 1 or like Zelda 3, perhaps one of the 2D Zeldas where you explore a big overworld and go into caves and dungeons and things and fight a boss most of the time.
So is this the same developers as Enter the Gungeon, and they just found a new thing to obsess over? Or
this is, I think it's a new developer. They may have created 1 or 2 other games, but this is the first one that I played from them. It's a fairly small team. 2 names in the credits primarily took care of everything, and they had a bunch of like playtesters and consultants and things like that. But
cool,
very small studio, it seems like. The premise, I mean, it's got just sort of like the classic generic Zelda / RPG premise where it's like, oh, the corruption has returned and scattered your friends, also other spaceships, around the overworld, so you need to go and rescue them and then defeat the corruption or whatever that is happening. But really, it is just an excuse for you to take your ship out and just go do Zelda things. And man, it is real good. I feel like if you have felt like they have not made a traditional Zelda game in a while, whether it's because they've been doing sort of the Breath of the Wild format or like making 3D Zelda games or that sort of thing, this is, like I said several times up to this point, it is just a 2D Zelda game, except you're a spaceship. So that was a big surprise. And it it combines a lot of my favorite things from Zelda and also just playing sort of like top-down 2D shooting games, where you have actually really interesting dungeon designs, where they're sort of maze-like, and you need to find keys and switches to open up new passages. And it feels like there are so many situations where you will see something, you'll see some obstacle, and just think like, oh, well, clearly I need some sort of ability or power to pass this obstacle that I haven't found yet. So maybe that's like just around the corner. Maybe I'll find it a couple hours from now. But just one of those like classic Zelda moments, or perhaps even a classic Metroid moment, where you see that thing and sort of look ahead to the future when you've expanded your skill set a bit and can make a little more progress. So that's also very fun and satisfying.
But not until you try to like jump at it 15 times and shoot at it to see if there's something you can do.
Yeah. That definitely happens where you're just like, oh, maybe I don't need a special item. No, I do. Well, that was optimistic of me, but that's fine. That's just sort of the experience.
Right, absolutely.
And then where the shooting game aspect comes in is that, you're just a little ship that flies around, and enemies appear and shoot bullets at you. So there's like a small amount of of a bullet hell component, because sometimes the screen can get quite crowded with bullets and everything. But as you are playing this and defeating enemies, you unlock skill upgrades for your ship, and you can put those into attributes like firing speed or firing range or boost speed, and like all these other little things that just augment how your ship performs. And it's very cool because you put these upgrades in, but you can also just take them out and put them into different systems one-to-one. Like it just fully refunds you all the upgrade points you spent anytime you want to change your build. So I found myself in a lot of times, like if I run into a boss fight, I just go, oh, well, I don't really need like the speed upgrades or all these other upgrades during this boss fight. I will just take all those points and put it into like pure firepower or whatever. Or there are these racing segments where you go, okay, so for this one, I really do need just all the boost speed that I can get. So I would just take all the points in my weapon systems and put them into boost. And it just lets you do that anytime, which I thought was very cool. Because you never feel like you're just locked into one sort of build.
That's cool. And so is it structured in a way that like you die and then go back and reallocate those things, or you can kind of just do them on the fly?
No, you can actually do them on the fly. You can do them in the middle of a boss fight if you feel like your current build is not working out for you. Like, and that definitely happened several times because some bosses would just their attacks would keep me a certain range away from the boss. So I would just pull up the upgrade screen and go, okay, what systems can I take points out of to get a little bit more range out of my gun? And that was always sort of an interesting decision to make, and I just really liked that it gave you the option to do that. Whereas, I don't know, in some other game, if you were like with a more permanent skill tree, you would just realize you had sort of like leveled up your character in a way that is unhelpful for the boss you're currently fighting, or just the situation that you find yourself in. So that was very nice, very player friendly.
Or to sort of lock the ability to kind of remix those things behind like a lather, rinse, repeat, like death, reallocation, try again kind of thing.
Yeah. It's very generous as far as like death goes. It's actually, so first of all, I mean, and this is maybe speaks more to just my experience with 2D shooters, is that it's not super difficult. I feel like, when you talk about these 2D shooters, especially sort of the bullet hell types, it alienates a lot of people who see these games and would just be like, oh, I would never play something like this. It just looks impossible.
Yeah.
But like the baseline game is just not that difficult, which is nice. It gets very frantic at times, but they also give you a lot of options to or a lot of ways in which you can change the difficulty. Like they have just straight up an easy mode where it is like, I forget how they describe it. It's like explorer mode or something like that. And it is just sort of like the super casual, like no stress, just, you want to explore some dungeons mode. And then they have an advanced mode, which is, for the hardcore people. I just kept it on normal and it was fine. And then they also have these levels, or these sort of different styles of how you shoot, down to one which just, I think, automatically targets and fires at the closest enemy to you. So, like, you could just turn this into Vampire Survivors, I guess, if you just wanted to steer your ship around, and that would be totally fine. So, I feel like even if you typically don't play, or if you, they're not exactly making it a lot of top-down shooters at this point. But even if it's like a genre you've not really spent a lot of time with, if you're into something like Zelda games, then this is completely playable. And, maybe you'll have a good time playing a shooting game, even if you're not as experienced with them. So that was very nice. It's like the whole game just feels very sort of like welcoming and player friendly with all these options they throw at you.
Yeah, because I'm looking at screenshots and the bullet hell thing is very clear from some of these images. That's a screen full of things that are trying to kill you, surrounding you in very kind of interesting and overwhelming geometric patterns.
Yeah.
That immediately sort of makes me think that maybe this isn't the game for me, but you compare it to Zelda, and I'm like, geez, I always sort of felt like Zelda could have more guns.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you should play Enter the Gungeon.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like you could get into this. The most frantic it gets is like in the boss fights towards the end of the game. And at that point you have a ton of upgrades for your ship. So that sort of like mitigates it a little bit. You also just have it's basically a dodge roll. So you just hit one of the shoulder buttons and your ship sort of like jukes to the side. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I realized I wanted that in a 2D shooting game, but that is great.
And are you invincible while you're in the roll?
So that's a good question. That was one thing I was like, I spent probably the first 80% of the game just thinking, man, this little dodge roll thing would be great if I could also dodge through bullets. And it turns out that is a power that you get very late in the game.
Oh, really?
So for most of the game, you cannot do that. But I feel like the game up until that point is not hectic enough where you would absolutely need something like that to survive. So you could basically train yourself to dodge bullets up until you get that power, and then you just become just completely invincible because you can dodge through anything. So
you are the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So very satisfying when you finally unlock that.
Yeah. Yeah, this sounds super fun.
It was really good. Yeah, I played a lot of it last week. I actually got through the entire thing because it's just so easy to keep going. Like, it feels like there's always like another little secret around the next corner, or you feel like you're that close to unlocking the next dungeon or completing the next cave that you're exploring. And it turns out as soon as you do that, there's just another thing waiting for you to check out. So it gets kind of dangerous. Ended up playing this a lot longer than I expected in some sessions.
Can I ask, how did you discover this? How did this come up? Because it's not something I've heard of. It's not sort of one of the, I guess the big indie releases that everybody seems to get hyped for. It didn't show up in the last Nintendo Direct. So what was your sort of discovery path to Minishoot Adventures?
I first saw it, I was on Resetera forum a couple of weeks ago. I forget why exactly they had discovered it, but they were just saying like, hey, there's this little indie game that came out. It's pretty good. Had an overwhelmingly sort of like positive review score on a bunch of aggregators, which is actually was like notable enough that they decided to mention it.
Yeah. And
at that point, I was just way too deep into Dragon's Dogma to consider playing something else. So I was like, okay, not going to play that right now, but it looks cool. I will remember Minishoot Adventures. And then last week, one of my friends just started playing it, and he started like raving about it to people. So it's like, oh, okay, I'll finally check this out.
Now is the time.
Yeah. And it turned out it was really good. So
cool.
Happy to spread the word. One of the things that impressed me the most about it, though, is that sort of like Enter the Gungeon, the premise of just you being a little like 2D spaceship flying around and inhabiting this world that is also full of like 2D spaceships feels like you should just be encountering references to like past shooting games or even Zelda games just constantly. I feel like that the temptation for them to just fill this full of references is right there.
Yeah.
And sure, you do get a bunch of little Zelda enemy references, which is fun. And I caught a few enemies that look sort of vaguely like Gradius bosses, which is just unavoidable. Once you design enough spaceships, eventually one of them looks like a Gradius boss, so that's fine. But it's not like Enter the Gungeon, where it was just references constantly being thrown at you. And for the most part, it manages to just feel like its own thing, which I think is more difficult these days, especially when you're making an indie game, to pull off. I just watched this video about, there were like these 2 RPGs that came out recently. One of them was that Sea of Stars game.
Oh, yeah.
And there was another, what was it? Like Chained Echoes, I think?
Yeah.
And one of the critiques throughout the entire video is that both of those games are just filled with references to previous JRPGs, which is fun, but, I feel like once you cross a certain threshold of references in your game, it just becomes exhausting, or at least to me, where I'm just like, okay, I get it. I played Chrono Trigger, and everybody loves Chrono Trigger, but it's also nice if you can make a game that just sort of is its own thing, and does not fall back on having just like, oh yeah, remember this power-up, or remember this boss from Zelda or whatever? Here it is in this game.
Well, we stole it, and here it is again, yeah.
Yes. I mean, so yeah, there are a few of those for sure. But everything else, from like the enemy design to just the overall look of the game, it's got this very distinct sort of like line art, or not, well, kind of cartoony, but just like, it looks like it takes place in this sort of ancient desert, which is very unusual. The music, I was expecting something, I don't know, like an older sort of shooting game style soundtrack for like high energy or something like that. But it's just like this incredibly mellow sort of like pleasant soundtrack the entire time. Even the boss fights don't get especially intense. It's just very weird, but it just fits in with the whole cute sort of aesthetic of these little ships flying around. And it just avoids being calling back to too many other properties at any point, which I was very surprised by.
Oh, interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Something like that has to be sort of deliberate, right? Where it's just like one reference too many, and somebody in the dev team has got to be like, all right, we've gone too far, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think it's like, I mean, I can't imagine how the development went, but you think like, oh, so what should we make this area look like? What if it looked like this area from this other game? But then they just like didn't make that decision for in any of those cases. They just like, oh, well, we'll just have it, we have this completely different vision for it, and we're going to do that. We're not sort of just like cribbing off other games that already exist that people have already played. So
yeah,
it's very cool. They even managed like the biggest pitfall of when somebody makes a 2D Zelda game is just like every one of those games just has the exact tree from Link to the Past in it. Because I don't know why. Maybe there's only a few ways to draw a big oak tree in a top-down Zelda game, and they just all end up looking like that tree.
Right.
And they they still sort of have that tree in this game, but it doesn't look exactly like a Zelda tree to the point where I just recognized it instantly. So, at least in terms of the tree design, they did a very good job distinguishing themselves.
Points for creativity in tree design.
Yeah. So, very good all around. Hope it's doing well for them, because it was a really fun game.
Nice. Steam, I presume?
Yeah, it's on Steam. Just came out last month, so who knows what their plans for getting this on other platforms are. But, I'm sure at some point, if it does especially well, it'll pop up on Switch, because it seems like everything does.
Yeah. Cool. I'll have to put this on my list. It sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was good. Steam Deck compatible, I believe.
Nice. Well, now you're talking my language.
You know how much you love the Steam Deck.
We know how much I love excuses to charge and update and then download and play a game on this PC.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, that has been my Switch experience over the last few weeks. But
oh, really?
There are only so many consoles you can be playing at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I've not had that issue with the Switch. It's almost always sort of at the ready.
Oh, see, I always get the thing where you start playing a game and it's like, hey, there's a system update. Do you want to do the update now? Do you want to just obliterate whatever game you were in the middle of? And I feel like that's a very delicate moment in navigating the menus. Just which of these options erases all the progress that I made in this game, but not this one.
Nice. All right.
Anyway, what have you been up to?
I have been up to Botany Manor.
Yeah.
I've actually been diving into the Game Pass a little bit because they've kind of landed a couple of really interesting indie games on there. I've churned through. So this was one of the ones I was kind of looking forward to. This got teased a little while ago at one of Xbox's kind of indie directs.
So this is one of those Game Pass games?
This is a Game Pass game, correct? Okay. Yeah, it's also on Steam, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, so it was originally sort of teased as you have a giant English manor and you're doing some gardening, and I thought it was going to be like a farming game essentially. Mm-hmm. It's called Botany Manor. So I watched the trailer, and it was a lot of sweeping shots of a big, beautiful English house with gorgeous gardens and people kind of walking around and exploring. And
it looks
I was
great.
like, oh, this beautiful. It looks very cool, and I like giant English houses, and I like gardening and farming in games sometimes. And I thought, I thought I knew what this game was, and then I played it, and it was not really that. So I think it's kind of sly in the way that they've been marketing. It's also a little, I don't know. I don't want to say disingenuous, but if you want this to be a gardening farming game, it's absolutely not that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So I luckily, once I sort of realized what it was, I was like, oh, cool, I'm here for that too. That works for me. Because it's actually kind of a pretty sly puzzle game. That and it's kind of surprisingly more story driven than I think I generally give, some of these
most
gardening
botany games. Sure.
Correct. Yeah. Credit for being. So you are in fact exploring in a beautiful giant English manor, and it takes place in the 1800s, and you are returning to your giant home after traveling from some time away. And you get a note saying that, the house and the gardens are in a bit of a state of disarray. We apologize. We tried to keep up with it while you were gone, but you'll want to, walk around, take a look at things and see what you can kind of set right. So you start exploring your home, and you start getting clues that you are a botany student in the 19th century who is trying to write your kind of perfect dissertation on all of these kind of really interesting and varied and kind of hard to grow plants and flowers from around the world that you've cultivated here at your giant manor. So you're filling out a book. You're collecting clues on the exact conditions certain things grow in, and what kind of lighting they need, and what kind of soil they need, and what kind of what else, what kind of pot they need, so yeah. I don't know if I'm doing this justice by any stretch. So you walk around sort of a segment of your home, the orchard, or the the drawing room and the main sitting room and hallways and stuff like that, or the kitchen, or the back patio that sort of goes out to the greenhouse. And each of those have kind of a little collection of plants that you clearly have sort of tried to grow in that place, and you're now trying to sort of get right so you could put that information in the book that you're writing. So you collect clues. You'll study a poster hanging in the wall in your hallway, and you'll find a postcard in a drawer that has a note from a friend on the back about, oh, we saw these beautiful flowers growing, in the desert in this country, and we thought of you. So you'll cross-reference that with like ideal daytime temperatures in the desert in Tunisia. And so you figure out, okay, it's 90 degrees every day at the high noon, and that's when the plants blossom. So then you have to sort of like recreate those conditions for the plant to grow in your English countryside house. But they only grow if there's a fire burning nearby or some other sort of like sci-fi detail. So you kind of like are trying to collect enough clues to recreate the exact ideal situation and conditions in which these plants blossom, and then you document that. And the documentation process it's done a little bit like the mystery solving wall they have in
yes.
Yep. Every sort of obsessed person in a murder mystery has in their basement. Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
The quintessential just yarn wall or whatever.
Correct, yeah, with yarn connecting all the dots together. So you're sorting through all of your clues, essentially trying to sort of put together a timeline and then replicating those clues in the real world to try to get that flower to blossom. And it's a crazy puzzle because you have all of these details. You can pick up and interact with just about everything in the manor, and some things are relevant, but some things aren't. Some things are just sort of like filler. And there's not really like a clue system or anything like that. You're really just sort of trying to figure out like, what does this mean? Is this have relevance to this plant and this flower or some other thing growing in some other corner of the house? But there's kind of a fun efficiency to it. Like you're never so overwhelmed by clues or kind of nonsense clues that you feel frustrated. It doesn't have a clue system in it, so it's not like you can push the trigger button and sort of like go, maybe you should think about this.
Oh God, yeah.
So it does sort of toe the line between kind of being kind of easy enough to sort of suss out what's relevant. And difficult enough that you do spend some time kind of like doing a little bit of trial and error. And I've made enough plants like not blossom to realize, okay, I'm not on the right path. I need to like try something else because this is clearly not working. And then I'll find some clue I overlooked, or you'll find a photograph that like, oh, I didn't flip this over and there's a note on the back, or things like that, obviously from a adventure game that maybe I should know better.
What happens if the plant doesn't blossom? Do you just get to try again?
You do get to try again. Yeah, you have to find a couple more seeds to replicate the experience, and then you kind of change a couple of the clues in your yarn wall, essentially, and try again. There's one where you had to sort of mix certain chemicals to create a flash. So you were modifying the flash on an old-timey camera with certain chemicals that you found in the kitchen to make the flash brighter and hotter that would spark the exact moment the plant would grow. And I kept putting the wrong chemicals in. So it was this sort of like dull, like kind of pop. And the plant would do nothing. It was just a pot. It would just sit there and be sad. And I was like, I'm missing something. What am I missing? And I had to go like do some more research and study a poster hanging on the wall on the back of the door in the kitchen to get a clue. And so it was fun. It was definitely had like a mystery machine kind of vibe where you're trying to glue all of this stuff together in some relevant way. To fill in the blanks in the book that you're trying to write. And because it's the 1800s and because you're a woman, you're not taken seriously. So there's all these kind of clues throughout the house that you find of like manuscripts you've submitted for books you want to write that have been rejected because one of the things is sort of like the study of botany is a serious thing for serious people. Perhaps you should write a book about gardening for housewives.
Ugh.
And yeah, of course, like I roll my eyes and I get angry and I double down on my efforts to like grow the plants and finish the book. And it's fun. It's like, it's cozy, but it's sort of challenging enough that it feels like you're putting in some work and you're just not just sort of wandering around the house. And you get this sort of like fun subtext about gender roles in the 1800s and defying what people sort of expect of you from having a posh life and living in the English countryside and wanting to be sort of a studied person who is taken seriously in the world of botany. And it's really interesting. And I think it does more than it generally, a game like this, I think would maybe need to do.
This sounds like the Obra Dinn, but for plants.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It sounds like exactly like that game. Well, not exactly, but the same sort of like less structured detective work that you do in that game. sounds like you're doing very similar stuff in this, which is very cool because that game is it's pretty unique in that I feel like there are not a lot of games that are just that open-ended. But it feels like in this one you are left to deduce a lot of things by yourself.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Which I kind of like about it.
Yeah.
It's annoying when a game is trying to constantly kind of edge you forward and like doesn't let you sort of like consume at your own pace, particularly a puzzle game, where sometimes I feel like I'm playing a puzzle game and like I am the smartest person in the world and I got it before anybody else.
Yeah.
Or then sometimes I'm just sort of like, just leave me alone, let me figure it out.
Yeah. Like it doesn't zoom in on this one section of the screen to be like, this could be a clue. Maybe think about this, and you're left to like make your own observations.
Right. There is one thing in the game, one collectible that is like a blinky, like the game sort of all games have like some thing that's like, oh, it's everything painted red you can interact with, or something will like shimmer or light up, and that's a
shiny object on the floor.
Right. So there's the one shiny object for each plant is its seed. And usually there's enough clues that are sort of like, oh, you'll find the seeds for this in the orchard. But if you're wandering around in circles in the orchard, not sure where the seed is, like it glows. And once you pick that up, it creates sort of an entry for it in your book. But the book is, other than sort of like, I found this seed in the orchard, there's nothing. So you're really sort of like building from zero once you find the seed. So I think it's smart about sort of telling you like, where is the trigger for the next mystery? But not really giving you any details on what that mystery sort of contains. And I like that about it, rather than me kind of walking in circles trying to find the thing that starts the mystery path. Like it sort of gives you like, you'll want to look at this, and then allows you to sort of fill in the blanks from that point forward. Nothing else is blinky or shimmery from there. So I think it's pretty sly about just using that sort of one nugget at the beginning of each sort of like plant's kind of entry, to get you thinking about that item, but not really doing any of the other work that you would want to do as the gamer, I think. So yeah, I kind of dug that about it. Yeah, it's fun. This is a very pretty game about wandering around a giant, beautiful home in the 19th century. But there's also kind of a fun mystery to all of this stuff as you're assembling this kind of chronicle of botany in the 1900s, and this secondary story about kind of defying gender expectations and doing your own thing. And yeah, it's cute. It's very satisfying. It's got some kind of fun to suss out puzzles. And once you kind of get into the cycle of what to look for and what has relevance, you get a little further in, and like you'll open up another room, a greenhouse later in the game, that will have like 4 or 5 plants that you're juggling at the same time. So you're starting to collect clues across multiple different things and going, okay, is it this plant or is it this one? And yeah, so you're definitely, it has an energy to it that sort of layers on additional challenges as you get further along, but it never overstays its welcome. I like that about it too, is the whole thing can be consumed in like 3 hours, 4 hours tops.
Good.
And yeah, it's good. I had a good time with it. I really like it. It's super easy to recommend, particularly if you have Game Pass. It's super easy to recommend. I really enjoyed it.
Is this on Android? I just like put this on the web.
Not that I'm aware of. No.
It sounds cool, man. I really like that Oberdin game, but that one, it was much longer than 3 hours, or at least the pace that I was going. But I made the mistake of like not really taking notes of my own while I was playing it, just relying on the notebook in the game, which is like maybe enough for some people, but it's just, there's so many details flying around, it's easy to lose track of stuff. So the fact that this gives you your very own in-game yarn wall as you're playing this seems like a good move.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I've played a couple of games sort of like this lately that have like the horticulture hook to it, Strange Horticulture being one. That was very much kind of a spooky shop running game that had like plants you were trying to grow and things like that. That was super dark. People were clearly trying to poison their spouses, and there were witches involved and things like that. There's a game called Potion Craft that I played that was super fun, where you're doing a lot of like crafting. It was right there in the title. You were doing a ton of like crafting and alchemy. Neither of those were games where you're sort of wandering around like a 3D world and like interacting with things. They were all very kind of like beautiful, but kind of static menu navigation and things like that. So the fact that you can kind of like go into Botany Manor and walk around the manor and pick things up and put things in your pocket and make little mental notes of things that might have importance later, it definitely feels like a very different kind of gaming experience than those other games did, even though all of them are just about sort of like growing things and mixing them and combining them and doing crafting. And there's something about just sort of being able to go into the house in the title of the game and explore and pick stuff up and kind of build the story that way. So yeah, I'm no other way to say it. I find it very satisfying.
Yeah, well, it looks very cool.
Yeah. So again, this is called Botany Manor. Just want to make sure I mention the title again.
Cool. I'll have to check it out when. I'll just play it on Steam. Who knows? The only instance of botany and sort of like crossbreeding I can think of in a Final Fantasy game is in Final Fantasy XIV, where you can have your own personal gardening plot and crossbreed seeds together to hopefully get something good.
I didn't even have to ask the question that time. DJ, and how does that relate to your love for Final Fantasy?
Well, yeah, I just needed to throw that out there. I was surprised. I was like, no, I guess you really don't spend a lot of time doing botany in those games. I don't know why not. Clearly, there was a niche that this developer saw, and they decided to fill it. So good for them.
Yeah.
The only other I was thinking also of that. I don't know if you played the Street Pass game that was like about flower crossbreeding. I think you own a little flower shop. I don't even remember how that worked.
I don't think I got into that one.
No, that was not one of my favorites of that whole series, but it was very like, oh man, somebody made a game about just growing a bunch of different types of flowers. That's cool. It was very different than all the other ones that were out for a Street Pass at the time.
Yeah. I mean, that sort of like crossbreeding flowers and finding different types of plants and things like that is an element of Animal Crossing even that I never really got into. Like I've had friends, I think you were one of those friends who was very into like crossbreeds and trying to grow rare color types of flowers and things like that. And I always sort of felt like, okay, I put a couple plants down and come back in a couple days and it'd be like 4 million plants all over my island. And now I have a problem. I have to cultivate and pick 500 purple posies off of the hill behind my house. So it just was never a thing that I put a lot of like time into because it just seemed to always sort of like spiral out of control.
Oh man, that was like my whole thing for a while. I had different like phases I would go through, and this is the DS version of Animal Crossing, where I started doing this crossbreeding. I remember I was looking for ways to make money, to make bells, because I don't know if I was playing the stock market at that point. And you could crossbreed blue roses, I think, and sell them for quite a bit of money. But they were very difficult to end up with. Or it was either blue or black roses. I forget which one was more valuable. But I would spend like weeks trying to do this, and I was just like, gotta get this first batch of blue roses to pop so I can make a fortune selling these things at the store. And by the time I finally did, it had been such a process. And I had gotten so like deep into just like managing these flower plots all around my town. I was like, I can't sell these. These are my babies. I can't just like sell these for a quick buck over at the Nook Mart. Although maybe at that point I had found other ways to make money, but I felt like at some point just something clicked and I was like, no, now I'm just doing it because I'm way into botany and I'm not trying to turn a profit on this.
I'm way above money. I don't need money.
Yes, exactly.
I just need blue roses. Thank you.
Yeah. And I had so many blue roses at the end. It was incredible.
Right.
People would come over and I'd just be like, no, these are not for sale.
Oh, that's funny. I do remember kind of reading the online, forums, guides, Reddit, whatever, for the DS and 3DS versions of Animal Crossing. And there were all of these, like, how to do crossbreeds. And, like, they would build a little grid. You had to put one plant here and one plant in this particular square. And you had to wait 3 days and only water them twice. And I was like, no, I'm out. I'm not. I am not this person.
I think they actually changed the way it works in New Horizons. And when I found out, I was so mad because I was like, I know how to crossbreed flowers. Let me just do this. I'm like a pro at this already. And it was like, whoa, it's different now? And like, I felt kind of betrayed.
Why is it not the game I remember it being?
Yeah, it's like all this, botany knowledge I've accumulated. It's no longer helpful.
Well, channel it into Botany Manor.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just, escape to my manor in the countryside where nobody will bother me.
There you go. All right. We forgot to mention it at the top of the show, so we'll mention it here. Next week is the week that we do our Monday night streams, so we would love for you to join us Monday, May 13th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to try to get back to We Were Here Expeditions, The Friendship.
Yeah.
We Were Here is this sort of slightly spooky co-op asymmetrical puzzle game. DJ and I have played quite a few entries in that series in the past, and we're going to try this new one out.
Yeah, it's basically an escape room, and we'll see if we survive. Usually I do not survive.
There is a theme in the games that we co-op, and it's typically one of us trying to solve a puzzle while the other one burns to death or something like that. So, tune in on Monday, May 13th, 10 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/VGHangover for that to play out as you would expect.
Well, maybe it'll work out for me this time, but that's also part of the fun. So we'll see how it goes.
And I will invite everybody to join our Discord if you want to see the SpookTube videos that DJ and I and Creed and Twisted Link have made in content warning. We've shared them all to our Discord, so definitely go to VGHangover.com to look for an invite to the Discord to hop in there and check that out and chat with us about other video games and things that might be interesting to you.
Yeah. At some point, I will post a supercut of all of those on our YouTube channel when I stop being lazy about it, but until then, you can join the Discord and see them there. Yeah,
absolutely. In the meantime, if you need any more video game hangover in your brain, definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover and go to the aforementioned VGHangover.com for a Discord invite and show notes and links and any other kind of fun stuff you need about the show.
Yeah.
We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcasting app of choice. We're on all of them. Don't forget about Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, all that other stuff. And maybe help us out by telling your friends about the show.
Yeah, really does help us out. Get the word out, bring in some new listeners so they can, what was I going to say? Send us their SpookTube videos? Is that what they're supposed to do? Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see them.
We need more bodies to accompany us down to the old world and film more little spooky knife ghosts. So maybe it's your friend. Who knows? Anyway, speaking of spooky knife ghosts, we want to give thanks again to Fear of Dark for our intro and outro music this week. If you'd like to hear more of his work, you can go to fearofdark.bandcamp.com. Largely knife ghost free, but you can get the rest of his albums there. That would be terrific.
Despite his fear of dark.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure if it's his fear of dark or is it just a general fear of the dark. Not sure.
Our collective fear of dark.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll be back next Monday night streaming We Were Here Expeditions. Maybe tune in and check us out. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks so much for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
Yeah.